70% of women feel that they're not pretty enough at least once a day. And chances are that if you've clicked on this video, no matter how many compliments you get or how much you try to change, you still feel that way. But the truth is that that feeling can be changed. I've read over 60 research articles and dozens of books on self-worth and confidence. And what I discovered was that there are real, common reasons why you feel this way and proven ways to also shift this feeling. So in today's video, I'm going to share 7 research-backed ways in which you can feel pretty and build confidence from the inside out. But before we get into that, there's something even more important that we first need to talk about. Why you feel not pretty enough in the first place. Because if you don't understand why you feel this way, your brain will keep falling back to the same patterns again and again, and we don't want to do that. But that's how the human psychology works. You need to understand the reason behind something to actually change it. You cannot heal what you don't understand. So let's just get into it. I'm going to drop a truth bomb here. If you've been feeling that you're not pretty enough, that feeling is not random. And honestly, it's not just about the way you look. It's actually about the world that we've grown up in. A world that teaches us that beauty standards is something that we continuously have to chase. That beauty is something that you always have to earn. That you're always almost there, but never quite enough. But here's the truth. Beauty standards have never been stable. What is considered beautiful always keeps changing. A decade ago, it was curves, and then it was thinness, and now it's the clean girl look. And tomorrow it will be something else. So basically, it never stays the same. And it's not just the trend, it's actually something that is created intentionally. What I mean by this is there's an entire industry, to be precise, a $500 billion one, that profits off your insecurity. It profits off the idea that if you just change this or if you just try this, fix this, then you will look beautiful. But that belief, that gets under your skin quite literally. Because it's not something that's just out there, not affecting you. It actually gets in here. Your brain actually starts to internalize those beauty standards before you even realize it. And one study also found out that people actually snap judgments about your face within 100 milliseconds. That's even faster than blink. And they're not just judging beauty, but they're also attaching things like trust, intelligence, and smartness with the way you look. And the thing is that this is the same thing that your brain also does to you. So if you've ever felt like you're invisible and people treat you differently based on the way you look, you're not imagining it. Your nervous system is basically responding to a world that has taught you that your worth lies in the way you look. And once you start believing that, you also start chasing something that you'll never catch. And take my example. When I was in school, I was really insecure about my nose, my teeth, my hair. I thought that those were the things that were holding me back in life. But now I know that the way I looked was never ever the problem. But in fact, the things that I learned about beauty and the way one should ideally look was the problem. And that story, I didn't learn this. It was actually passed on to me by people, by media, comments, and even silence. And gradually it became so embedded in me that I forgot completely how I want to dress up like, what beauty meant for me. And that is the trap that I am talking about. The beauty standards are designed in a way that you are never meant to feel done. You always are supposed to feel comparing, fixing, and wanting the next best thing to look good. Because that is exactly what keeps the whole system going. But think about what will happen if you stepped off that track, if you didn't care what beauty standards look like. That is where the real shift happens. So not by changing the way you look, but understanding your own self-image. So if, like me, you've also caught yourself thinking things like, I got the glow up, but I still don't feel good enough or pretty enough, you're not crazy. You're just looking at the wrong place to build real confidence. But we're going to change that. I'm going to point you in the right direction. And that's exactly why you can't miss the next part, because I'm going to explain to you something that no one ever talks about. The hidden reason why you feel not pretty enough even when everything looks okay from the outside. If you don't understand this next part, no matter what you do, you will never feel enough. So let's get into it. Okay, here's another truth bomb. Your insecurities did not start with Instagram filters. In fact, it started long before that, in quiet, ordinary moments which did not seem like a big deal back then. That one offhand comment from a family member, or that one friend who was always told that she's pretty, or that silence when you walked into a room and no one looked at you. Those moments leave marks, not on your face, but on your self-image. For me, it started a lot earlier. When I was growing up, I had really bad skin issues, and I remember I started hating mirrors gradually, and I really felt invisible. I was also labeled shy, and that label stuck with me for so many years. As a result, I didn't speak up much, and when I did, I thought that no one was really listening and that what I said didn't really matter. And so people always saw a version of me that was trying to hide from something or the other. And here's what I've learned from my personal experience and research, that this is not just your memories, but they're also your programming. For example, according to the self-schema theory, your brain actually builds your belief system based on repeated emotional and social experiences that you had as a child or an adolescent. So if you were often compared, ignored, or criticized, your brain gradually started saving that information as truth and started giving it a fine name: this is who I am. So even when you grow up and you get that glow up, you change your looks, the old file of that reprogramming still exists that makes you feel not good enough. For years, I was grooming, dressing better, trying to learn skincare, but I still didn't feel beautiful enough. This is because the story that I had told about myself to myself hadn't really changed. And that is exactly what most people miss. So confidence and self-worth basically doesn't come from what you see in the mirror. It comes from how your brain interprets it based on a filter that you learned while you were growing up. And one thing that shapes that filter is called as the halo effect, where beauty gets linked to everything about yourself, whether it's likability, intelligence, or the way you treat people. And that's exactly what we're talking about next. So no matter what you do, don't skip the next part because it will change the way you see yourself. Let's keep going. Let's talk about why we tie our confidence to our appearance, and as a result, we lose both. The halo effect is where the psychological wiring gets real. So in psychology, the halo effect is basically a cognitive bias where we attach a positive trait like physical attractiveness to other unrelated traits such as intelligence, competence, and kindness. In a 2006 study, participants rated symmetrical and conventionally beautiful faces more trustworthy without knowing anything else about that person. And unfortunately, this bias is not just about your perception, but also impacts real life situations. Conventionally attractive people are more likely to be hired, promoted, believed, and even forgiven in court. This is obviously not fair, but is a very real situation. And so over time, if you feel like you don't fit the conventional beauty standard, your brain starts to absorb information and messages which go like this. If I'm not attractive, I'm not capable. Maybe I'm not interesting enough and I don't belong here. But this is exactly how the confidence gap is formed in you. Through your own reflections, through repeated social feedback, and through biases like these. Because confidence, which is built on beauty standards alone, is something that's external. It's not internal, and therefore it doesn't last for long. You might feel happy when you're praised, when someone says you're pretty, but then the next moment you feel like you're invisible again. On one random bad skin day or on one photo that you don't like of yourself, your confidence starts to dip. So here's basically the psychological trap. When your self-worth is built externally, it will need constant validation for it to survive. But that is exactly the cycle that you'll never be able to win, because like I said, the beautiful enough standard always seems to rise and rise. Which is exactly why the next part of this video is the most important part yet. Because if you don't shift where your confidence actually comes from, no matter whatever you do about your looks, you'll still feel not good enough. So next I'm sharing research-backed tools that have helped me and so many others build confidence and feel pretty from inside out. The number one thing that you can start doing is to follow people who feel real. We're all Instagram addicts, so let's start by changing that one thing that we see every day. If you're really used to looking at people who look their polished best and are living their best lives every single day, then your brain will start seeing that as the normal. Ultimately, you will start comparing every single part of yourself to them, and this is also called the social comparison theory, where we tend to compare ourselves to things and people that we see the most. So I started following people who showcased their scars, their wrinkles, their acne, and basically owned who they were. And slowly, my brain stopped holding me to an impossible beauty standard. I personally started seeing beauty in diversity, and that really also changed the way that I saw myself. And when your external environment changes, it ultimately also leads to change in your internal dialogue. Which brings me to the next thing that you can do, which is wear what feels like you. Once my feet got real, I also started paying attention to how I was dressing up. Psychologists call it enclothed cognition, which is the way you dress also affects the way you think and feel. And I realized that half of the time I was dressing up to impress other people and not to feel like me. So I completely stopped asking, do I look good in this? And replaced it with, do I feel like myself in it? And this one shift actually helped me in feeling something that I hadn't felt in a long time, which is being comfortable in my own skin. And that also helped me get out of my head and into my body. And that brings me to the next thing that you can do, which is to move to feel present and not perfect. When you're struggling with confidence, it's also really easy to treat your body like a project. That movement reminded me that my body is not just for the looking, but actually living. And research on embodiment actually shows that when we move our body, it connects us to ourselves a lot more. This connection also increases our body satisfaction and also lowers our anxiety about the way that we look. So I started stretching, walking, dancing, not to fix something, but to actually feel better about myself. And slowly, I stopped treating my body like a problem and started seeing it as something that belonged to me. And when you also feel safe in your body, you can also start building self-trust again, which brings me to the next point, which is create tiny wins to increase your self-trust. This one is a game changer because confidence again is not based on just one moment of your life, but is actually built through tiny wins every day. Psychologists call this self-efficacy, or the trust in your ability to handle challenges. So I started giving myself small, brave challenges, such as speaking up when I was afraid to speak, wearing that outfit I thought wouldn't look good on me, and posting that video that I thought no one would watch. And each time that I followed through, it was like I was telling my brain that, see, I did it. And that is exactly how confidence grows, not through praise, but actually through self-proof. This also made me attuned to what I actually needed rather than what I thought I was supposed to be doing. Which brings me to the next point, which is to check in with what you really need. Some days I thought that I needed to look better, but what I actually needed was rest or fresh air or to actually feel like I am safe. Psychologists call this self-attunement, or the ability to listen to what you need without any judgments. So I started checking in with me before I reached for the concealer or for that comparison. I started asking myself, do I really need to change something? Or do I actually need more connection and more resting or some more love? When you start listening to your real needs, you also stop abandoning yourself. And slowly that builds something that's even deeper than confidence, which is self-trust. And I also knew that I wanted to change some parts of myself to actually look good, which again brings me to the next point, which is use your mirrors to connect and not critique. I know that we've all been there, standing in front of the mirror and looking at our flaws and critiquing ourselves. But studies of mirror exposure therapy also state that how you see yourself in the mirror also changes how you feel about yourself. So I changed something. I looked into the mirror not to fix something, but to actually connect with myself. I made it a point that whenever I looked into myself in the mirror, I said something really good about myself. It did feel awkward at first, but over time, it did change the way I saw myself in the mirror. I stopped critiquing myself and thought that it was okay to have acne, to have wrinkles, to have scars. I basically stopped becoming my own worst enemy and stopped judging myself. But there were of course times when I needed something more gentler, and for that I went back further. Which brings me to the last point, which is talk to your younger self quite often. And there is real neuroscience behind this. When you look at your younger self, your brain actually activates a compassion network, the same network that activates when you care for someone else. So I've put a picture of my younger self on my desk, and when I feel like critiquing myself, I instead look at her and say something like, "You're okay, and that you've always been enough." This is a very small action, but it has often stopped me from spiraling into overthinking and thinking even worse about myself. It also sets as a gentle reminder that I'm not worthy because of the way I look, but because of the way I am. So these are the 7 research-backed tools which has changed mine and many others' lives, and I've helped them build confidence and feel pretty from inside out. But if you've noticed, none of these steps are about achieving perfection. It's more about creating a really healthy relationship with yourself and the way you look and the way you feel about yourself. Because that's what real confidence is, right? Feeling safe enough to be seen without any perfection. Okay, I know, so we've covered a lot today, so let's have a quick recap of what all we've been talking about. Number 1. Beauty standards is a game that we were never meant to win in the first place. They keep changing, so you keep chasing. Next, your self-image wasn't just shaped by you, it was in fact shaped by those tiny comments and external things that you faced in your childhood and adolescence. Which leads to the halo effect, which is quite real. People treat beauty like it means everything, and sometimes so do we. And the most important thing, a glow up would also not fix if you're not feeling enough from the inside. And finally, we covered 7 research-backed ways in which we can actually build confidence and trust ourselves from the inside out, and obviously feel pretty. And now that you have the tools, I'm thinking that maybe it's not just about being confident for you. Maybe what you really need is also to cultivate deep self-love for yourself. The kind that doesn't depend on the way you look, but about the way you speak to yourself when no one's watching. And if that's you, I think you'll really love my video, The Neuroscience of Self-Love. It will actually break down how your brain sees and perceives and builds self-love, and how you can build it yourself, one daily ritual at a time. I've also linked all the research papers and the books I read for this particular video in the description below. And if you're a nerd like me, you'll love going deeper. And before you go, I really want you to remember that you are already enough. I'm really proud of you. I believe in you. And I'll see you in the next video.